Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Jay-Z's most loyal stage companions right now aren't his ride or die crew. They're Jadakiss and Fat Joe, two men who spent years going at his neck on wax. Let that sink in for a second.
How do you feel about him bringing out Jadakiss and Fat Joe? Me personally, I thought it was a dope moment because we all know they had beef in the past. So I mean,
I know, right? It's just ironic. It's funny that the only people that will hang out with Jay now are his ex-enemies. Isn't that weird? But none of his friends.
Look, on the surface, sure, it could read as a peace offering moment. Growth, maturity, hip-hop unity, all that good stuff. And honestly, a lot of people bought into that framing without blinking. But pull back and really look at what's happening on that stage, and the picture gets a lot more strange. The only people willing to stand next to Jay right now are the ones he used to trade shots with publicly. His actual day one friends, the ones he broke bread with, the ones who built with him, they're nowhere near that stage. Memphis Bleek doesn't count. That's practically a running joke at this point. We're talking about the broader circle here, the people Jay came up with, the inner ring.
Does that make sense to you? I'm dancing on stage with my enemies, with our nemesis, with our ops, and none of your friends are on stage with you? That doesn't, except Memphis Bleek? That doesn't seem odd to you? No? No? Just look the other way? No? Nothing? That's nothing? It's not weird to you? No? Okay. You guys are dumb, man. Y'all can stay being dumb all you want. I'm gonna keep laughing at y'all.
Where are they? Because from where a lot of us are sitting, it looks like the ex-enemies showed up and the real friends quietly disappeared. That's not a good look. That's not something you can just wave away. And that's exactly the point. When you got people asking real questions, pointing at real patterns, the wrong move is to look the other way and pretend there's nothing to see. That's not logic. That's loyalty to a narrative. Here's where it gets real though. The truth doesn't move. It just sits there, completely unbothered, waiting. And if you know you're telling the truth, you don't shift. You don't soften your position the second somebody pushes back. You stand firm because the facts are the facts whether somebody wants to accept them or not. What's wild is watching certain people in the culture completely reverse their positions the moment the temperature changes. One week they're riding with one story, next week they've quietly updated their take, hoping nobody noticed the flip. But people notice, everybody notices. And once you catch someone doing that, once you see them reshape their version of events to match whoever's in their ear at the moment, that's it.
That's all. Because you know I stand 10 toes down. The thing about the truth is, you're not going to change the truth. You're going to stand 10 toes down. You're not going to waver like I have, because I always know I'm telling the truth. Just because someone's saying I'm lying and I'm not, that don't mean I'm going to change my story. But I see a lot of these worship change their stories often, all the time. Like, why? I don't understand how you can believe people that have already lied.
Credibility's gone. You can't unhear a lie. You can't reset trust like a video game checkpoint. If someone lies to you once, that's a full stop. Done. It's not a gray area. A liar doesn't become honest because it's convenient for them to be honest right now. That's not how character works. Now flip it to the beef itself, because this is where the conversation gets genuinely interesting. Rap beef as a concept has always had a performance layer baked into it. Cameras rolling, crowds watching, clicks being tracked. It's spectacle. It always has been. Think about what's actually happening when two artists are going at each other in diss tracks. They're on television. They're on streaming platforms. There's an audience involved. You cannot do anything legitimately dangerous to somebody in that setting. It's fundamentally theater, and everyone involved knows it. Acting aggressive in front of a camera while a producer is counting down to the next take is not menacing. It's cosplay. Anyone who's been around long enough understands that if you're puffing your chest on a recorded platform, you're not actually doing anything. The camera is the guarantee that nothing real is happening. So why pretend otherwise? Why perform that aggression like it's authentic? The WWE comparison is actually perfect here. Nobody walks out of Monday Night Raw thinking those guys genuinely despise each other in real life. It's a show.
If someone lies to me once, I don't believe them again. Period. I don't care what they do. You a liar. To me, like, rap beef wasn't real. Pause. Like, and if it did get real, I'd be like, this is rapping. Like, we on TV. There is no beef you can have in front of pause a camera. You can't do nothing illegal to anybody. It's just stupid to pretend you can. It's just dumb. Acting tough in front of a camera means you know you're not doing nothing. Unless you're just like, yo, I'm gonna just go to jail. Like, who wants to go to jail?
The production value just changes depending on whether you're watching wrestling or hip-hop television. Battle rap is an even cleaner example, honestly. Those guys will spend an entire round talking about a man's mother, his kids, his finances, his whole existence, and then dap each other up the second the round ends. That's the culture. That's understood. The lines are clear. So when people start treating rap beef like it's a live-action documentary of genuine hatred, They're already lost. They've confused the performance with the reality behind it. And speaking of performances that aren't landing, let's address this whole spoken word poet era that apparently nobody asked for. Some of these freestyles that are getting praised right now are genuinely not it. The crowd energy tells the whole story if you're willing to listen to it. Energy in the room during a truly cold verse is unmistakable. You can feel it through a screen. These recent freestyles, that feeling isn't there. The crowd can hear it too. Something's off, and no amount of co-signing is going to change what your ears are picking up when you actually sit down and listen without the hype surrounding it. The bar has to be the bar. It can't just be a bar because someone famous is delivering it. And here's where it gets real. Because everything they just broke down about the Summer Jam freestyles, about Michael Jackson pauses, about crowds pressed against the wall like something holy was happening, that's the ceiling. That's the moment you're chasing forever once you've seen it. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. That's the honest truth. You don't get to go back to thinking small after witnessing something that big. So what do? You go find the only room that can match that energy. You take that Paris record to Paris, because that's the one place on earth where the crowd already knows every word before you even open your mouth.
Like, it's all bullshit. So I never looked at it as real. It was like the WWE, or, it's like battle rap. Them be beefing with each other and they give each other pounds after. They be talking about each other's mothers. Battle rap, they talk about each other's mothers. And I don't know why Stugotz thinks that those freestyles are dope. Like, they're so, like, I don't know why he thinks he became such a spoken word poet.
That's the only place you're getting that response. Not every song has that kind of home. Not every performance has a city that claims it the way Paris claimed that record. You have to know where your magic lives. But let's talk about the merch situation for a second, because this part right here should wake people up. You're buying jerseys and hats, and you don't even know who's collecting the check on the back end. Who actually owns the majority stake in Mitchell and Ness? Because here's a real question worth sitting with, and it's probably not who you think it is. And then ask yourself who buys the most of those jerseys? Who rocks those hats the hardest? Who's spending the most money on the product? The answer to that question is us, every single time. And that's not an accident. That's a pattern. There's a go-to guy in this industry, somebody who keeps making that transaction happen, somebody who keeps delivering the consumer base right to the table, and that go-to guy has been named directly. It's on record. And what does that make people who keep spending and smiling about it? It makes them look like they don't even see the play being run on them. You can't be loyal to someone who's selling you. Strip out the emotion for a second. No feelings, no fandom, no nostalgia, just pure logic. If a business consistently profits off your loyalty while funneling money away from your community, that's not something you keep supporting. That's something you examine. Men are supposed to be logical. Run the numbers, follow the money, see who wins and who doesn't. Now shift back to the independent era, because this is where the story gets painful. Going 0 for 30 pitching that record is not a small thing. 0 for 30. Kev LZ passed, Rick Rubin passed, Sylvia Rohn passed, Sony passed. Clark Kent was the only one who believed in it, the only person in the whole room who saw what it actually was. Every major player in the industry turned their back on it completely. So knowing all of that, knowing who rejected it, knowing who had zero faith in it, why would you spend the rest of your career desperately chasing those same people's approval? That industry didn't want you. They made that clear 30 times over. And yet the need to be validated by them never went away. The need to get that nod from the other culture, to get that pat on the head, whether it was for the Afro back then or whatever's happening now with the Yankee hat. Now it's going to be Yankee hats every day? That's not ambition. That's something else entirely. Because the people you built it independently to prove wrong, the ones who dismissed you, the ones who laughed at what you were bringing, they were never going to respect you the way the people who actually listened to the music respected you. Their guys were never cool. They were never the ones setting the standard. The validation from them was always worth less than the crowd that was already there, already locked in, already sold. And somehow that still wasn't enough. And then there's the outfit situation. Let's talk about it, because this part is actually wild when you think about it. Somebody in the conversation throws it out there plain and simple. Do not walk around in a Yankees hat. That's a hard no. But then the thought starts to evolve into something bigger. What if that's actually the move? What if every city he pulls up to, he's rocking that city's team hat? Mitchell and Ness flying off shelves in every market, local stores moving units just because he stepped off the plane wearing their colors? Could be calculated, could be genius, honestly. But then the reality check hits. Nah, it's too easy, way too easy. And somebody puts it out there without any sugarcoating. The reason he had to fall back on a baseball uniform in the first place is because he genuinely can't put a fit together anymore. The drip is gone. The eye for fashion that used to make people stop and stare, that left the building a while back. He can't build a real outfit from scratch, so he leaned on the uniform as a crutch. Every variation of it, too. Like, how many different ways can one person cycle through the same baseball look before someone in their circle says something? And that brings up Dapper Dan because of course it does. Because Dapper Dan was the standard, he was the pinnacle. If you had a Dapper Dan piece, you weren't just dressed, you were saying something about where you stood in the game without opening your mouth. But here's the thing people forget. Dapper Dan wasn't around forever in that golden window. By the time Rockefeller was actually popping and the money was moving the way it was moving, Dapper Dan had already been shut down. The era was already closing before a lot of people even got to fully experience it. But our narrator, he was there. He was locked in during that window when the pieces were still circulating. He had the Sherlin coat, black, big oversized hood, deep pockets, and you know exactly what those deep pockets were for. Not the Gucci joint, not the flashy name brand splash, the Sherlin. And he was 17 years old walking out of a Chinese restaurant feeling like he had the whole block on lock, confident, certain he was killing it and he knew it. Then Spanish Hec pulled up, and the whole picture changed in about 5 seconds flat. Spanish Hec came through with the full Dapper Dan setup, the snorkel, the pause joint, the whole look assembled the right way. And he had the link chain while our narrator was out here rocking the rope. That's the difference right there. That one detail, the link versus the rope. And then Hec had the convertible sitting out front. Might have been a Benz. The narrator pauses on that detail like he's still processing it decades later because honestly, what can you even say? He got crushed. He'll be the first one to admit it. He took the L, he felt it, and he moved on. But there's more to Spanish Hec than just the fashion moment. They went to Isaac Newton together. Started off in school side by side, running in the same circles, figuring out the same streets. And then, like a lot of young men from that era and that environment, they both eventually moved away from school and into the hustle. Life pulled them in different directions. Our narrator ended up in boarding school. DC stayed in the neighborhood, linked up with Kev Charles. And from what it sounds like, things got real good for him, real fast. The narrator didn't know the full picture. He just heard pieces here and there. Then the word came that Hec got killed, and he cried. Sitting away at boarding school, far from Washington, far from the block, far from everything familiar, and he got the news and it broke him. Because Hec wasn't just some guy from the neighborhood. He was a real one. He was the person who crushed him in a fashion standoff outside a Chinese restaurant when they were teenagers and made him level up. He was the person who represented something about that era that was real and vibrant and alive, and so he cried. Then he came home on a visit from boarding school and he turned the corner and Spanish Hec was just walking up the block, right there, in the flesh, like a ghost that wasn't actually a ghost. He couldn't believe it. Thought you got killed, man. How are you here? He went back to boarding school carrying that relief. Hec was alive. The story had a different ending than he'd heard. He could breathe again. And then Hec got killed for real. That's the part that hits the hardest. Because the grief came twice. The first time was practice. The second time was permanent. And by every account, even at the end, Hec never backed down. They were shooting at him and he was still throwing hands. Still fighting back. Still standing on everything he stood on his whole life. Quack, man. Rest up. Some people just earn a different kind of respect. Not because of what they've done for you, not because of clout or history, but because of who they actually are at their core. That's a rare thing in this industry. And anybody who's been around long enough knows exactly what that means. Take Daniel, for example. An OG in every sense of the word. The kind of person whose heart you can feel through everything they do. Their courage, their thoroughness, the way they carry themselves through situations that would break most people. That's not manufactured. You can't fake that kind of character, and you definitely can't buy it. But here's where it gets heavy. Talking about people like that, people you genuinely love and respect, it pulls up memories that don't stay buried for long. Losing friends young, losing them to the streets or to circumstances that never should have played out the way they did. That kind of grief doesn't disappear. It just waits. And sometimes one conversation is all it takes to bring it all rushing back. That's exactly what happened here. A full flashback, not a passing thought, a real moment where the past came forward and made itself present again. That's the PTSD nobody talks about when they discuss hip-hop culture. The real cost of coming up in environments where survival wasn't guaranteed and the people you rode with didn't always make it to the next chapter. But the story doesn't stop there. Even through all of that, the conversation shifted to something that speaks directly to the culture's evolution. Dapper Dan. After the Rockefeller drug laws hit, after the feds started sweeping through and locking people up left and right, Dan wasn't outside the same way anymore. That era changed everything. The streets tightened up. The culture went quieter in certain places. And one of Harlem's most iconic figures stepped back from the visibility that had made him a legend. That's the part people sometimes miss when they celebrate Dapper Dan's legacy. The timeline, the pressure that came from law enforcement closing in on the circles Dan moved through. It wasn't just a fashion story, it was survival, it was adaptation, and it happened right at the moment when the feds were running up on that entire world. Understanding that context is everything. It's the difference between seeing Dapper Dan as a tailor who dressed celebrities and actually understanding what it meant to build something that powerful in Harlem during that era, under those conditions, surrounded by that level of heat. Hip-hop history doesn't always come in clean chapters. Sometimes it comes in flashbacks, in pauses mid-sentence, in that moment where someone goes quiet because the memory is bigger than the words. That's the real story, and that's what Backstage Culture is here to dig into. If this kind of storytelling connects with you, the untold moments, the real emotions underneath the headlines, the history that gets skipped over, then subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, and we're just getting started. See you in the next one.